Senior anthropologist Zigzag's compound eyes twitched nervously as the observation feeds activated in the diplomatic vessel's analysis chamber. His research team, 12 of the Concorde's most brilliant xenobiologists, stood frozen before the wall of sensory data pouring in from the human reception area below. "Recalibrate the aggression monitors," Zigzag ordered, mandibles clicking with agitation. "These readings cannot be accurate." The team had spent decades studying Earth, intercepting broadcasts, analyzing historical archives, and cataloging the species' violent tendencies with clinical precision. They had calculated a 78.3% probability that first contact would trigger territorial displays if not outright hostility. Yet the monitors showed nothing but positive emotional indicators from the gathered humans. No elevated adrenaline, no aggression pheromones, not even the subtle musculature tension that preceded threat displays in every known sentient predator species. "Impossible," he chittered, antennae vibrating with confusion. "These are the same humans who obliterated their own cities in atomic fire? The species whose historical archives are essentially catalogs of increasingly efficient warfare." Science Officer Kriz adjusted her sensory apparatus, her exoskeleton flushing purple with confusion. "Confirmed, Director. I'm detecting oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine cascades. They appear to be genuinely happy to meet us." Below, Dr. Elena Reyes, Earth's diplomatic liaison, approached the Vreen delegation with open palms and a warm smile. No weapons, no armor, not even the ceremonial, defensive posturing that protocol had prepared them to recognize as peaceful intent among predator species. "Distinguished visitors," she said, voice modulated to convey respect without submission. "Earth welcomes the Galactic Concord with open hearts and minds. We offer friendship and knowledge, hoping to learn from those who have traveled so far to meet us." Behind her, human children, the most protected demographic in any species, presented flowering plants to the insectoid diplomats. Musicians played harmonious compositions rather than the war drums the cultural specialists had predicted. Artists displayed representations of cosmic wonders rather than conquest trophies. "Their temporal lobes are unusually active," noted neural specialist Verax examining the brain scans, "particularly regions associated with empathy and social cognition." Fleet Commander Vrax, responsible for the security of the Concord delegation, mandibles twitching with unease. "It must be deception. Predators often lure prey with false security signals." "Unlikely," countered Kriz. "We've monitored their internal communications. They've made no special military preparations beyond standard diplomatic security. Their leaders appeared genuinely invested in peaceful relations." That evening, while humans hosted an elaborate welcoming celebration featuring cultural exchanges, cuisine, and music, the Vreen gathered in their sealed chamber for an emergency conference. The sensory data projected across the room told a story that contradicted every predictive model they had developed. "I don't understand," military strategist Ziv admitted, his normally confident voice wavering. "How can the same species that invented nuclear weapons also compose symphonies? How can creatures who slaughtered millions over ideology offer interstellar cooperation without demanding concessions?" Zigzag's compound eyes gleamed with sudden understanding as the pieces aligned in his analytical mind. "Because we're missing something fundamental," he said slowly. "Our models assumed humans are like other predator species, fighting for territory, resources, or dominance when environmental triggers activate instinctual responses." He gestured toward the celebration visible through the viewport, where humans laughed, danced, and engaged enthusiastically with alien concepts. "But these readings suggest something unprecedented. Humans must possess a biological switch, some specific trigger that transforms these peaceful beings into the ruthless warriors documented throughout their history." As fireworks burst overhead celebrating new friendship, the Concord hastily approved Earth's provisional membership in the galactic community, while secretly establishing Project Threshold, a classified initiative to identify humanity's mysterious killer trigger. Little did they know, they were asking entirely the wrong question. Test sequence 37, failure. Director Nylith's luminescent skin dimmed with disappointment as she reviewed the results displayed across the laboratory's curved view screen. Her slender fingers traced patterns through the holographic data, searching for variables they hadn't considered. Humans subjected to resource deprivation formed cooperative distribution systems rather than competing, she noted, dictating for the record. Even direct territorial incursions merely triggered diplomatic protests. No aggression markers detected beyond mild cortisol elevation. 6 months had passed since first contact, and Project Threshold was no closer to identifying humanity's mysterious combat trigger. The Concord had invited 50 human representatives to attend the prestigious Galactic Academy on Centauri Prime, ostensibly as a cultural exchange, but the sprawling campus was, in reality, a sophisticated testing ground. Every corridor contained hidden sensors. Every social interaction was cataloged. Every sleep cycle monitored for neurological patterns. The humans' quarters subtly manipulated environmental conditions to induce stress responses documented in other predator species. Nothing worked. Perhaps our methodology is flawed, suggested Kriz, her exoskeleton now bearing the distinguished purple markings of a senior researcher. Other species respond predictably to resource competition, territorial violation, hierarchy challenges. Humans simply adapt. Colonel Marcus Chen felt the wrongness immediately upon arrival. 27 years in Earth's military had honed instincts that needed no conscious analysis. As he strolled through the Academy's bioluminescent gardens with his daughter, his eyes systematically identified surveillance points, choke points, and subtle defensive architecture disguised as aesthetic choices. "They're testing us," he whispered to 19-year-old Sophia, his voice casual, his smile maintained for watching eyes. "The question is, testing us for what?" Sophia rolled her eyes, tapping scrolling xenolinguistic translations on her datapad. Her father saw threats everywhere since her mother's death in the Jakarta conflict. His hypervigilance had only intensified since her acceptance to the Academy exchange program. "Not everyone is a potential enemy, Dad," she replied. "Maybe alien. Social dynamics are just different. Professor Zaltek says many species find human unpredictability unsettling. They're probably just trying to understand us." Later that week, when Sophia's translator malfunctioned during xenolinguistics class, she found herself unable to communicate with her classmates, a deliberate malfunction engineered by Threshold researchers to induce isolation stress. Instead of growing frustrated or withdrawing, Sophia began improvising a rudimentary sign language that bridged communication gaps. A telepathic Lorani named Xandar approached her, the delicate fronds around his face pulsing with genuine curiosity. Unlike most telepathic species who found human consciousness disorienting, he seemed fascinated. Their friendship bloomed rapidly, another variable Project Threshold hadn't anticipated. "Your mind has spaces we cannot access," Xandar explained. During their private language sessions, his telepathic voice like gentle music in Sophia's thoughts. "Most species have predictable mental architectures, but humans have rooms with closed doors." Meanwhile, High Commander Vrax reviewed the disappointing findings in the secure command center beneath the Academy. The project had exposed humans to resource competition, territorial violations, even personal insults, all known triggers for other warrior species, without producing the legendary ferocity documented in Earth's history. Beside him, the neural monitoring station suddenly flashed urgent alerts. Intelligence feeds from the border sectors scrolled across tactical displays. The aggressive Krell Empire had destroyed 3 outposts. Their hive mind soldiers were advancing toward conquered space. "We're running out of time," Vrax hissed, compound eyes reflecting the emergency beacons. "If we can't unlock the human warfare trigger, we lose a potential tactical advantage." Director Nyleth studied the human recreational activities displayed on the monitors, competitive games played with laughter, martial arts practiced with discipline, but no aggression, vigorous debates conducted with passion but mutual respect. "Perhaps," she suggested quietly, "we've been testing the wrong variables. Perhaps what activates human lethality isn't what threatens them, but what threatens others." Across campus, Xandar's sensitive telepathic fronds detected an unusual pattern in Sophia's mind, during their conversation about her father's military service, neural pathways that remained dormant in normal conditions but flared briefly when she spoke of protecting family or helping friends. In his private communication to Project Threshold, he noted, "I believe humans don't possess a singular trigger. They possess something far more dangerous, the capacity to choose their causes." The emergency broadcast cut through all Academy communications with jarring abruptness. The holographic feed materialized in every common area, dormitory, and laboratory. Stark, unfiltered footage that made even seasoned Concord officials flinch away. The Krell assault on Outpost Sigma 9 wasn't just an attack. It was methodical extermination. Colonel Chen stood motionless among the mixed species crowd in the central atrium, his expression betraying nothing as the footage showed hive mind. Soldiers moving with insectile precision. Their armored carapaces gleamed under emergency lighting as they systematically sorted captives into categories. Scientists separated for capture, military personnel executed on site, civilians herded into processing chambers. "Biological resources," explained the Academy Dean, a multi-limbed Thraxian whose normally melodious voice had flattened with shock. "The Krell Empire views other sentience as raw materials or threats. Nothing between." Later that day, Chen was summoned to a classified CU briefing with other former military officers. Among the human delegation, Admiral Zorax, the Concord's senior military commander, displayed strategic projections across a three-dimensional star map. 3 outposts have fallen. 17 million dead or captured, Zorax explained, his facial tendrils drooping with exhaustion. The Krell are expanding after centuries of isolation. Their hive mind adaptation grants them perfect tactical coordination, but has left them without certain restraints we consider fundamental. Chen studied the invasion vectors with professional detachment, but his mind catalogued the admirals. Careful phrasing, without restraints, a deliberate euphemism for genocide. "You're losing," Chen observed quietly. The admiral's tendrils stiffened. "The Conquered has not officially declared war." "The Krell appear to have a different perspective on that," Chen replied, gesturing to footage of civilian habitats being systematically vented to vacuum. Across campus, security measures tightened. Around the human quarters, access restrictions appeared on their communication devices. Species that had been friendly now watched humans with nervous calculation. In her xenolinguistics laboratory, Sophia noticed the sudden distance in her classmates' behavior. The Arcturian student who had enthusiastically shared cultural idioms now flinched when she approached. The Quarian who had invited her to naming ceremonies suddenly found excuses to study alone. "They're afraid of us," she whispered to Xandar during their private session in the telepathy alcove. "But why now? We haven't done anything." The Lorani's delicate fronds rippled with discomfort, their bioluminescence dimming. The Concord Council debates surrender of contested systems or full-scale war. Some believe humans might be valuable in such a conflict. "As allies?" Sophia asked. Xandar's mental voice hesitated. "As weapons." Project Threshold intensified its studies with new urgency. High Commander Vrax authorized escalated testing protocols, psychological stress tests on isolated human subjects, simulated combat scenarios, exposure to fearsome predator species, even staged mock executions. The results only deepened the mystery. Humans demonstrated remarkable courage and resilience, but not the berserker rage or cold-blooded killer instinct that their historical records suggested they possessed. "They endure," Director Nyleth observed, reviewing neural scans from a particularly aggressive simulation. "They adapt, they cooperate, they problem-solve, but they don't transform into the warriors from their own histories. We're still missing the key." Meanwhile, Sophia's telepathic training with Xandar had progressed to deeper mental connections. During one session, he detected unusual patterns in her neural architecture, pathways that remained dormant in normal conditions but showed faint activity during cooperative exercises, particularly when simulating protection scenarios. "Your species is unlike any we've encountered," Xandar confessed, his telepathic voice trembling slightly. You harbor tremendous capacity for violence, yet it remains leashed by something equally powerful. It's as though you keep your predator nature in a locked room, and only you hold the key. As Krell forces pushed deeper into conquered space, refugee ships arrived at Centauri Prime in growing numbers. Displaced beings filled the Academy's auxiliary facilities with stories of destroyed worlds and shattered lives. The humans listened as aliens they'd befriended described lost homes, lost families, lost futures. Something subtle began to shift in the human contingent. Not anger, not fear, but a quiet, collective resolve that made Project Threshold's neural monitors light up with unprecedented activity. The trigger they sought was beginning to emerge, but not how they'd expected. It wasn't awakening in response to threats against humans. It was awakening because humans had begun to consider the Concord species as their own to protect. The Krell attack came without warning during the Academy's Luminescence Festival. The celebratory atmosphere, an attempt at normalcy amid growing tension, shattered as synchronized precision strikes disabled the planetary shields. In the Academy's Security Center, Colonel Chen was reviewing evacuation protocols with Concord officials when the tactical displays erupted with warnings. Unlike the chaotic responses around him, Chen became utterly still, his eyes rapidly calculating variables only he seemed to see. They'll target communication nodes first, then landing zones to prevent evacuation, he stated with unsettling certainty. Their secondary objective will be data centers, followed by capture of high-value personnel. The Concord commander stared as his predictions materialized on tactical screens in real time. How could you possibly know their tactical sequence? Demanded Security Chief Thrix. Chen's expression remained neutral. Because it's what I would do. Inside the Xenolinguistics building, Sophia was helping a mixed-species study group decode an ancient Arcturian text when the power failed. Emergency lighting bathed the room in crimson as distant explosions rattled the windows. Evacuation Protocol Sigma, announced the facility AI. All non-combatants proceed to designated shelters. Panic bloomed among the students, but Sophia's voice cut through the chaos with unexpected authority. Everyone stay calm. Pravit, gather the translation matrices. Zarlon, help the Vresian students. Their ocular sensitivity makes them vulnerable in red lighting. When they reached the exit, plasma fire scorched the courtyard. Krell dropships landed throughout the campus, disgorging armored soldiers who moved with horrifying coordination. Back inside, Sophia ordered, her voice suddenly carrying a confidence that surprised even her. Barricade the doors. Move to the interior laboratory. No windows, one entrance. Through the security monitors, they watched Krell soldiers systematically executing faculty and selecting valuable captives, primarily telepaths and scientists. Their efficiency was terrifying. This wasn't random violence, but calculated harvesting. In Project Threshold's monitoring station beneath the Academy, Director Nylith and Commander Vrax watched Chen's neural patterns with growing fascination. Look at this, Nylith whispered. His amygdala should be flooding with fear responses, but instead, his prefrontal cortex is hyperactive while emotional centers are dampened. He's not afraid? Asked Vrax. It's not that, Nylith replied. He's channeling fear into focused cognition. I've never seen neural architecture that can do this voluntarily. Chen moved through the chaos with preternatural calm, acquiring weapons from fallen security forces, analyzing Krell movement patterns, and calculating interception routes. The 3 Vreen security officers who joined him were stunned by his precision. How he communicated exactly what to do with minimal words. How he exposed himself to draw fire while creating killing opportunities for them. Stay behind me, Chen instructed as they approached the Xenolinguistics building. Fire only when I signal. Conserve ammunition. Headshots only. Meanwhile, in the barricaded laboratory, 8 Krell soldiers finally breached the makeshift defenses. They segregated the students with brutal efficiency, immediately identifying the telepathic Lorani students, including Xandar, for capture. These possess valuable cognitive architecture, the Krell commander transmitted to its unit. The others are expendable. Process them. Project Threshold researchers, monitoring through hidden cameras, witnessed the moment they had sought for 6 months. As a Krell soldier raised its weapon toward a trembling Arcturian child, something changed in Sophia Chen. There was no rage in her face, no fear, no hesitation, only focused intention that transformed her from student to predator in an eye blink. She drove a shattered chair leg through the soldier's neck joint with brutal precision, seized its plasma rifle, and fired 3 perfect shots before the remaining Krell registered the threat. Her eyes calculated distances, angles, vulnerabilities, seeing not enemies but problems to solve. The other human students followed her lead instantly, as if some silent command had activated them. They didn't fight like frightened civilians. They fought with coordinated lethality that matched the Krell's own efficiency. When Colonel Chen breached the room minutes later, what the Threshold researchers witnessed wasn't a reunion, it was a battlefield assessment. Father and daughter exchanged information with clipped precision, reallocated resources, and established a defensive perimeter with the surviving students. In the Threshold monitoring station, Director Nyleth stared at the neural readings in disbelief. "We were wrong," she whispered. "The trigger isn't rage or fear or bloodlust, it's not even about self-preservation. The monitors showed human neural patterns utterly unlike any previously recorded species at war. Not the chemical fury of the Draconids, not the cold calculation of the Quarian hive. Something uniquely, terrifyingly human. Their protection instinct," Vrax realized, watching Chen shield wounded alien students with his own body, while simultaneously planning their escape route. They don't fight because they hate what's in front of them. They fight because they love what's behind them. "Play it again," demanded Counselor Zorvin, his crystalline exoskeleton refracting light as he leaned forward. The holographic display in the emergency council chamber replayed the security footage from the xenolinguistics lab for the 7th time. The gathered leaders of 16 sentient species watched in silence as Sophia Chen transformed from student to warrior in the space of a heartbeat. No gradual escalation, no visible emotional shift. Simply an instantaneous state change that defied classification within established xenobiological frameworks. "Note how she doesn't display aggression signals," observed Director Nyleth, manipulating the display to highlight Sophia's facial expressions and body language. No territorial posturing, no rage vocalizations, no threat displays. She simply changes states. "Impossible," whispered a Quarian representative, their voice modulator struggling to express bewilderment. "All predator species exhibit pre-combat indicators. Even our most disciplined warriors cannot suppress evolutionary signaling." The footage shifted to side-by-side neural scans of Colonel Chen and other human defenders during the Krell attack. The patterns showed remarkable coherence across different individuals, despite varied backgrounds and training. "Humans don't possess a simple aggression trigger like other warrior species," Nyleth explained, her luminescent skin pulsing with academic excitement, despite the grave circumstances. "Instead, they harbor something far more sophisticated. The capacity for radical empathy, combined with ruthless pragmatism." The presentation continued with footage of human defenders fighting ferociously not for territory or resources, but for beings they barely knew. Most disturbing to the Council was how quickly humans returned to their affable nature once threats were neutralized, treating enemy wounded and comforting traumatized allies with genuine compassion. How can the same creature execute 6 Krell soldiers with mechanical precision, then minutes later comfort an injured child with such tenderness? Asked the Quarian, their optical sensors dilating with confusion. High Commander Vrax rose slowly, his battle-scarred carapace bearing fresh damage from the recent attack. "Because humans don't compartmentalize violence and compassion as separate mental states. They're integrated. The same protective instinct drives both behaviors." The revelation stunned the Council. Every other known predator species either embraced violence as a perpetual state or required extensive psychological recovery after combat. Humans simply switched modes, like deactivating a tool. "I propose," Vrax continued, "that humans represent the ideal Concord defenders, a species that fights only when necessary and with clear moral boundaries. Or, countered Counselor Threx, mandibles clicking anxiously, they represent an unprecedented threat. Their protective instinct could extend to ideological causes, making them fundamentally unpredictable. While the debate raged, Colonel Chen was summoned to the classified threshold facility beneath the academy. When researchers revealed their experiments and monitoring, they expected outrage or at least diplomatic protests. Instead, Chen laughed with genuine amusement. "You've spent millions in resources to discover what any human child could have told you," he said, examining the neural scans with professional interest. "We're not natural killers. We're natural protectors who become killers when necessary." "The difference matters." The lead researcher stared, bewildered. "But your efficiency in combat is precisely because we hate it," Chen interrupted. "The species that enjoys violence rarely excels at it. We perfect warfare because we want it over quickly." The researcher's recording appendage trembled slightly. "Then the trigger we've sought isn't a biological switch," Chen finished. "It's a moral choice. We decide what's worth protecting, then act accordingly." As the council continued arguing about humanity's place in the conquered, emergency alerts blared throughout the chamber. The Krell had launched a second larger assault. The Concord fleet was scattered, defenses compromised. Reports indicated they were targeting population centers rather than military installations. Desperate, Vrax approached Chen directly, bypassing diplomatic channels. The question he asked would forever change galactic politics. "Will you fight for species not your own?" Chen's answer was simple yet profound. "We already consider them our own. That's what you still don't understand." The conquered war room fell silent as the holographic display materialized Earth's response to their formal request for military assistance. Within 48 hours of learning about Krell atrocities against civilian populations, Earth's historically fractious governments had achieved unprecedented unity. High Commander Vrax and Admiral Thrix watched with compound eyes dilated in astonishment as the transmission showed industrial complexes across Earth's surface, reactivating dormant military infrastructure. Orbital defense platforms previously hidden from conquered surveillance emerged from camouflage. Massive interstellar transports, apparently civilian vessels, reconfigured into warships with practiced efficiency. "We anticipated perhaps a few thousand volunteers," whispered Admiral Thrix, mandibles clicking softly. "Not this. Not the species mobilizing as one," Vrax agreed, his carapace flushing with the blue-green of cautious optimism. Within 3 weeks, Earth deployed its first interstellar military force, 30,000 soldiers, engineers, and medics aboard hastily retrofitted vessels. What followed shattered the Conquered's understanding of warfare forever. On the Beryllian front, human special operators infiltrated Krell command structures by exploiting previously unknown weaknesses in hive mind communication protocols. Project Threshold researchers expected humans to destroy the command nodes, a standard predator species tactic. Instead, they inserted subtle cognitive errors that cascaded through Krell tactical planning, causing self-defeating deployments without a single direct engagement. "They're fighting smarter, not harder," observed tactical analyst Zorax, reviewing the operation data. "Not maximizing enemy casualties, but minimizing all casualties while achieving objectives." In the Arcturus sector, human engineers repurposed civilian mining equipment into defensive systems that rendered conventional Krell approach vectors suicidal. When the Krell adapted with new attack formations, humans adapted faster, not through superior technology, but through lateral thinking that Krell predictive models couldn't anticipate. "They're treating warfare like a puzzle," Director Nyleth noted, studying battle recordings. "Where other species follow instinctual or doctrinal patterns, humans improvise continuously." Most significantly, the Concord witnessed how humans voluntarily placed themselves in harm's way for strangers of other species. Human medics ran toward danger rather than away from it. Human pilots executed high-risk maneuvers to draw fire from civilian evacuation ships. After one particularly desperate evacuation of a Lorani colony, a human transport pilot transmitted simply, Tell my family I had good company at the end. She then deliberately maneuvered her damaged vessel between pursuing Krell fighters and the escaping refugees, allowing her ship to be destroyed so others might live. Project Threshold researchers, now embedded with frontline units, identified humanity's real tactical advantage, their capacity to expand their definition of their own to include other species. This trait, combined with their adaptability, made them formidable defenders rather than conquerors. Sophia Chen, having witnessed the darkest aspects of both human and alien nature, declined evacuation to Earth and instead joined a mixed-species medical unit near the front lines. Her experiences became a case study in human resilience. After engaging in necessary violence, she redirected that same intensity toward healing. During a particularly brutal Krell offensive targeting refugee ships, her medical transport was caught in crossfire. Communications recorded her final transmission before expected destruction. Tell my father I finally understood what he meant. This is what we're for. 3 hours later, against all tactical projections, Sophia's shuttle emerged from the debris field with 27 additional survivors from 3 species and a jury-rigged propulsion system cobbled together from damaged components. When a Thraxian commander asked how she'd achieved the impossible, her answer crystallized what the Concord was beginning to understand about humanity. We decided failure wasn't acceptable, so we found another way. The phrase rapidly became a battle cry among mixed human-alien units as the tide of war slowly turned. For the first time since the Krell invasion began, the Concord's strategic projections showed a path, narrow and costly, but real, to potential victory. Not through superior numbers. Not through technological advantage, but through humanity's stubborn refusal to accept defeat when protecting those they valued. As Admiral Thrix observed to his staff after reviewing the latest battle reports, the Krell calculate probabilities perfectly. Humans simply refuse to acknowledge them, and somehow that changes the mathematics of warfare itself. Magnify Sector 7, ordered Colonel Chen, now commanding the combined human Concord fleet defending the Arcturus system. The holographic tactical display dominated the bridge of the Concord flagship, unwavering resolve its blue-green projections, illuminating the faces of the mixed-species command staff. The display zoomed in on an approaching Krell vessel, unlike any previously encountered, massive, ornate, its biological-mechanical hybrid architecture resembling a predatory sea creature from Earth's darkest depths. It moved at the center of an armada of conventional warships, their formations creating a perfect defensive lattice. The Krell Emperor, confirmed Xandar, now serving as a telepathic intelligence officer after his rescue from Krell captivity. The trauma of imprisonment had left visible scars on his delicate features, yet he'd refused medical discharge. This is unprecedented. Imperial vessels never enter combat zones, facing unexpected resistance after a lifetime of easy conquests. The Krell Emperor had come to deliver his ultimatum personally. Surrender all contested systems, or face biological warfare against civilian populations. The transmission that followed was designed to break morale. The Emperor, speaking directly while behind him, captured beings from various species were subjected to horrific demonstrations of newly developed bioweapons. Skin dissolving, respiratory systems collapsing, neural tissue degrading while consciousness remained. When evidence emerged that similar weapons had already been deployed on New Tharsis colony, killing 17 million civilians of various species, humanity's response revealed another facet of their nature that stunned conquered observers. There was no heated outrage in Earth's leadership, no passionate declarations of revenge. Instead, they exhibited what Admiral Zorax termed cold wrath, a terrifying, calculated escalation of commitment that seemed to lower human emotional readings rather than heighten them. Deploy Guardian protocols, Earth's Defense Council transmitted through quantum channels. Approval granted for Contingency Omega. Within hours, human forces unveiled military technologies previously undisclosed to their Concord allies. Not planet killers or weapons of mass destruction, but surgical countermeasures developed against potential extinction-level threats. Dormant military AI systems, previously restricted by ethical protocols, awakened with narrowly defined parameters. Nanotechnology countermeasures deployed against Krell bioweapons. Cognitive warfare algorithms targeted specifically at disrupting hive-mind coordination without causing unnecessary suffering. Why conceal such capabilities? Demanded Counselor Threx during an emergency session, watching as human systems neutralized Krell advantages with unsettling precision. Because tools built to ensure survival can too easily become tools of domination, Chen explained, his expression somber as he addressed the council remotely from the command vessel. We've walked that line before within our own species. We don't take these measures lightly. The combined human-conquered forces pushed the Krell back to their territory, eventually surrounding the Imperial fleet in the Proxima Nebula, a decisive moment that should have ended the war with the Emperor's capture or death. As conquered admirals prepared the final assault to destroy the cornered Imperial fleet, Colonel Chen requested permission to approach under flag of truce. Madness, hissed Admiral Thrix, compound eyes flashing with agitation. The Krell have never honored parleys. They'll destroy your vessel on approach. Because no one has ever offered them honorable terms, Chen replied, his calm certainty unnerving even his human officers. They're backed into a corner. That's when enemies fight hardest, when they believe they have nothing to lose. Against all Concord tactical doctrine, Chen's shuttle approached the Imperial vessel alone and unarmed. For 3 hours, no transmissions emerged. Conquered forces prepared for the worst, the loss of humanity's most effective commander in a foolish gesture of misplaced mercy. When communications finally resumed, the galaxy witnessed an unprecedented sight. The Krell Emperor and a human colonel, standing side by side, announcing conditional surrender terms that preserved Krell autonomy within strict boundaries while establishing reparations for devastated worlds. Chen understood what the Concord hadn't, that cornered enemies fight hardest. By offering honorable terms instead of annihilation, he divided the Krell leadership from their hardliners, who demanded fighting to extinction. What the Concord initially mistook for dangerous human sentimentality revealed itself as sophisticated, strategic calculus. Peace achieved through strength exercised with restraint created more stability than peace imposed through devastation. The war ended not with the extinction of an enemy, but with the possibility of fundamental change, a concept previously foreign to both the conquered and the Krell, but central to humanity's understanding of conflict resolution. 5 years after the Krell War, the rebuilt Galactic Academy on Centauri Prime hosted an unprecedented symposium titled Understanding Humanity, Protectors at the Precipice. Representatives from across the conquered and former enemies, including Krell diplomats, gathered beneath the Academy's crystalline dome to witness the publication of Project Threshold's complete findings. The grand auditorium fell silent as Director Nihilith, now chief xenobiologist for the reformed Concord, stepped onto the central platform. Her luminescent skin pulsed with scholarly satisfaction as she activated the holographic display. Complex neural patterns filled the air, the complete mapping of humanity's unique cognitive architecture. For centuries, the conquered classified species according to predictable behavioral triggers, Nihilith began, her voice carrying through the perfect acoustics. Territorial species that fight for resources, hierarchical species that fight for dominance, hive species that fight for collective survival. She gestured, and the display shifted to show human neural patterns during various states. Peaceful cooperation, creative problem solving, and the distinctive configuration they now called protective mode. Humans defied classification because they possess something no other known species demonstrates, a voluntary combat trigger. They choose what they fight for, when to engage, and, most remarkably, when to stop. The display showed side-by-side comparisons of human and Krell neural patterns during combat, highlighting the fundamental difference. Krell brains showed instinctual uniformity, while human patterns revealed individualized decision-making even in the midst of coordinated action. In the front row, Sophia Chen, now the first human professor at the Academy, smiled at the memory of what her father had told the researchers years earlier. We're not natural killers. We're natural protectors who become killers when necessary. Colonel Chen himself had declined all offers of political power after the war, returning to Earth and his xenobiology research. When asked by Commander Vrax why humans could so easily step away from war when other predator species could not, he offered the insight that now formed the foundation of conquered human relations. Our most dangerous weapon isn't our capacity for violence, it's our capacity for choice. Violence is just a tool. What makes us dangerous is that we decide what we fight for, who we protect, and when to stop fighting. The symposium presented case studies that transformed military doctrine throughout the galaxy. The Battle of Arcturus. Gate, where human forces prioritized civilian evacuation over tactical advantage, seemingly sacrificing victory, only to reveal they'd laid a trap that required the enemy to believe they were winning. The Siege of New Terra, where surrounded human colonists repurposed terraforming equipment into defensive systems that held off Krell forces for 47 days despite being outnumbered 30-1. The Epsilon Incident, where a single human transport pilot deliberately crashed her damaged vessel into a Krell bioweapon deployment ship, transmitting tactical data until the moment of impact. Each case demonstrated the same principle. Humans weren't triggered by threats to themselves, but by threats to their moral vision of the universe. They would kill efficiently to defend it and work tirelessly to build it. Sophia's course, The Ethics of Power, became the most sought after at the Academy, attracting students from across the galaxy, including, remarkably, young Krell seeking to understand how restraint could be a source of strength rather than weakness. The Galactic Conquered, forever changed by its encounter with humanity, reformed its charter to incorporate human ethical frameworks alongside pragmatic security measures. The new Conquered Human Alliance created unprecedented stability through what became known as the Chen Doctrine. Power exercised with restraint creates more security than power exercised absolutely. On the final day of the symposium, a Krell philosopher, who had once commanded forces against humanity, offered a reflection that would be inscribed on the Academy's central monument. We came seeking to harvest the galaxy's resources. We encountered instead a species that considered compassion the greatest resource of all, and were willing to kill to defend it. In this vision, they were ruthless indeed. As the gathering concluded, Director Nyleth approached Sophia with a final observation from Project Threshold's research. We began by asking what makes humans kill, she said. We should have asked what makes humans care. The answer to both questions is the same: your extraordinary capacity to choose your tribe, rather than having it determined by biology. Sophia smiled, watching representatives of dozens of species mingling peacefully beneath the stars. That's the human equation, she replied. Violence is just a tool. Compassion is the blueprint that tells us when and how to use it.